the Prime Minister didn't take too kindly to an international interview conducted by one of his backbenchers, member for Hughes, Craig Kelly.
He was absent when the fires were burning.
Today he's made an announcement of another $2 billion.
Scott Morrison thought the right response to these fires erupting in Australia was to go and lie on a beach in Hawaii. And that was a dereliction of his duty as leader of Australia. You're facing now one of the greatest crises you've ever faced. And there is you, Mr Kelly, with respect, a senior politician who still doesn't think this has anything to do with a heating up planet. Nothing to see here, nothing to worry about, as virtually your entire country is eviscerated by fires. It is quite extraordinary.
It was sort of hard to work out who was interviewing who there. That led to this backhander from Federal Water Minister David Littleproud.
That's just a sideshow. He doesn't represent the views of the government and what he's saying there. And quite frankly, I've got better things to do than worry about what a backbencher goes and says on international TV. You know what? There's people's lives that we're trying to rebuild. There's 26 Australians that have lost their lives. You know what? I couldn't give a rat's what he said. It's irrelevant. Let's just focus on those people that are out there that need our help.
So where has Craig Kelly been hiding? If he's been hiding, and was he, as one report suggested today, told to stay away from giving interviews on climate change by one of the Prime Minister's advisers? Let's find out from the horse's mouth. Craig Kelly joins me on set right now. Craig, thank you for coming in.
No, great to be with you, Chris.
Where have you been hiding for 2 weeks? This is a long stretch not hearing from you.
No, Chris, look, I've been here. I've been around. I've been having a couple of days off. I've been enjoying watching the cricket, and we're back firing on all cylinders.
OK, were you told by Yaron Finkelstein, one of the PM's advisers, to stay away from interviews and get out of the publicity headlights?
When we had a conference call with the Prime Minister, this was straight after we did that. I did that interview with the BBC, some UK television, which was an appalling interview, Chris. They just didn't want to listen. They didn't want to listen to the facts. They wanted to bash the Prime Minister. I was there to defend our Prime Minister, to set out the argument, to explain. I really wanted to explain what was happening in New South Wales, particularly in my electorate. We just had fires a couple of days before there, a fire there at Voyager Point, to talk about that. And they just wanted to sort of hijack the complete interview. So it was obvious at that time that the international media weren't interested in the facts. They wanted to exploit the situation in Australia for their own political gains and for a lot of, sort of two-bit television hosts to try and build up their own publicity.
So did Yaron Finkelstein tell you to back away from
the Prime Minister said, try to hold off on any overseas interviews. He didn't just say that to me. He said it to everyone because that was meaning you. That was fair enough. Well, he may have. When he said, I had a little sort of smile on the face. Maybe he's talking about me. You know?
How did you react to that?
Oh, look, I understood.
It's not an attempt to try and silence your views?
Look, I'm here with you now, Chris. Yeah. I don't get signed off for these interviews. And one of the great privileges of being a elected member of the Liberal Party, especially as a backbencher, is we get to speak our minds individually. That's a big difference between our side of politics and the Labor side.
OK, Piers Morgan said that you were a climate denier and you should wake up to yourself.
Well, look, it was just, firstly, the use of the denier term I find offensive. Because what it does, it's trying to equate you with a Holocaust denier, of course. And it's trying to shut down the debate. So anything that you have to say about the facts, the evidence, and what the science actually says, not how these people say...
So you don't deny the fact that we are warming?
If you look at whichever data set that you pick, since the global cooling period, we had that global cooling scare from the 1940s to 1970s. Since the late 1970s, all the data sets show the temperature has been warming. I don't deny that. No one denies that.
So has the 1 degree increase, Celsius increase, in temperature in the last 50 years contributed or driven the bushfire season we've just
Well, there's actually a mathematical formula. Now, Peter Credlin on the program before had a couple of bushfire experts on before, and they said, no, it doesn't. And there's actually a mathematical formula to show that it doesn't, because it's called the Forest Fire Index, which sets aside, again, you've got one issue, you've got the Forest Fire Index, which is the weather conditions, and you've got the fuel loads, two separate issues. Now, on that Forest Fire Index, a 1 degree in temperature adds about 2 points onto that index. So where you may have, which index goes up to 100 points. But what it is, it's offset. 1 degree is offset by a decrease in wind speeds of 1.5 kilometres per hour. And when you look at the actual science, what it shows, yes, we've had that warming, but at the same time, we've also had a decrease in wind speeds.
Well, one of the
things to offset each other.
I understand that. One of the things I find difficult to understand is the fact that in the middle of a firestorm, if you look up some of your literature on firestorms, it can be between 1,000 and 2,000 degrees Celsius. And we're talking about an average world increase in temperature of 1 degree. I don't get how that is driving the bushfires.
Because if you look at this all around the world and the data for over the last 25 years, as we've had that slight increase in temperature, globally, wildfires have actually decreased. And not just a little bit, they've decreased by 20 to 25%. So around the world, bushfires, as we call them here in Australia, or wildfires, are actually decreasing as temperatures have gone up.
OK, can I play something for you? This is from Matt Keane, the New South Wales Environment Minister, who picked a fight last night in this set with the Prime Minister. Here's part of what he had to say. I don't have the grab with me, but what he did say is that he wants to see more action on climate change, and that means a reduction in emissions. What is your response to his view that we need to reduce our emissions even further than what the Paris Agreement stipulates we should?
There's a couple of things. Firstly, anything that we do here in emissions will have absolutely no effect whatsoever on fires. Absolutely none. The science is absolutely crystal clear about that. With 1.3% of the global total, and our electricity generating sector being 1/3 of that 1.3%. We could close everything down tomorrow and leave it closed for 100 years.
The Prime Minister said we could close everything down tomorrow and then within 9 days China would fill the gap in terms of emissions.
So it's not going to have any effect on the fires whatsoever. What will have effect on future fires is what we do on fuel loads. And that's the issue that we should be concentrating on. And that's the responsibility of those state ministers, those state environment ministers. They have the responsibility for the fuel loads.
Yeah. Can I ask a question off-centre now? This is about Bridget McKenzie and those sports grants. When I see $500,000 going to the Mossman Rowing Club, call me a cynic, but I kind of think and suspect that the government's trying to save Tony Abbott's backside, and that Mossman Rowing Club, of all rowing clubs in the universe, should not get $500,000.
Look, I don't know the exact details of what it was, but what is... With these grants, everyone puts in applications, everyone's able to, and it's a judgment call, Chris, about how you do it.
Is it a judgment call, or is it used by government to featherbed people in marginal seats?
There's no mathematical formula about how you allocate these grants. It's all a matter of what one person's perception is, or the people awarding the grants. I know I have the same thing in my electorate when I give out grants of much smaller amounts.
Did you get any?
In my electorate, yes,
Yeah.
it is. But we have separate programs as well, which I have to actually allocate, and we have a committee we put together, and everyone has a different opinion about where those grants should be allocated.
Will Bridget McKenzie survive, do you think? Should she?
Oh, I think she's explained the details herself. She set it out, and I think the explanation she'd give is very legitimate. The decisions were made in her office, and yes, they may have been different from what the Sports Commission did, but as I said, Chris, everyone will have a different opinion about where those grants should go.
Piers Morgan has just sent me a text. He wants to interview you tomorrow. Is that okay?
Look, I'm happy to interview Piers anytime. As long as
it was you interviewing him,
as
not
long
the
as
other way
it's,
around.
I might get my mate Brett Lee to throw a few more deliveries down to him as well.
Thank you very much for your time, Craig.
Thanks,
Kelly.
Chris.
All right, the member for Hughes.